The Grand Assembly Hall stretched across 3 levels of Unity Station, its curved walls displaying the symbols of 200 species who claim membership in the Galactic Council. Ambassador Daniel Harper stood at the human podium, his dark suit simple compared to the elaborate robes and bioluminescent displays worn by the other delegates. Behind him sat Lieutenant Kevin Walsh and Dr. Michelle Park, the other 2 members of Earth's negotiating team. This was their 4th attempt to secure fair terms for humanity's participation in galactic society. The previous 3 had ended with the Council offering the same restrictive agreements that treated Earth as a probationary member. Despite 5 years of human contribution to galactic civilization. Daniel adjusted his microphone and began speaking. His voice carried through the translation systems to every delegate present. Honored Council members, humanity comes before you again to request equal standing in this assembly. We ask for unrestricted trade routes, full colony rights in unclaimed systems, and voting representation proportional to our population and contributions. High Chancellor Zorthik of the Vrexian Empire raised one of his 4 arms. The reptilian being's scales shimmered with impatience. Ambassador Harper, we have heard these demands before. The Council has already offered humanity generous terms. You may trade on designated routes. You may establish colonies with Council approval. You may observe our proceedings and offer input when requested. With respect, Chancellor, those terms place humanity below every other spacefaring species. Daniel replied calmly. We are not asking for special treatment. Only equal treatment. The Chither representative, an insectoid being named Clickster, clicked his mandibles in what the translation system rendered as dismissive laughter. Equal? Your species only achieved faster than light travel 8 years ago. The youngest Council race has been spacefaring for 3,000 years. You must earn your place as they did. Kevin leaned forward and whispered to Daniel, who nodded and addressed the Council again. Then let us discuss what humanity has contributed in our brief time among the stars. Our medical teams have treated over 4 billion patients across 12 species. Human doctors discovered the cure for Vrexian bone plague, which was killing thousands annually. A fortunate accident in your research, Zorthik interrupted. Nothing more. Daniel continued as if he had not been interrupted. Human engineers redesigned the standard jump drive configuration, improving efficiency by 42%. This technology is now used by 70% of commercial vessels in Council space. An incremental improvement, Clickster said. Expected from any species seeking to prove themselves useful. Dr. Park stood and approached the podium. Daniel stepped aside to let her speak. Human peacekeeping forces have prevented 2 wars in the border regions. Our negotiators established the Treaty of Broken Moon, which ended hostilities between the Caliph and Drex after 60 years of conflict. Human agricultural exports currently feed 12 worlds that lack sufficient arable land. Another Council member, a floating gas being from the ethereal collective, spoke through its translation device. These are indeed contributions, but they do not entitle humanity to equal status with ancient civilizations. You are newcomers. You should be grateful we allow you in galactic space at all. Daniel took a deep breath and looked at his 2 colleagues. They both gave him slight nods. He had hoped it would not come to this, but the Council's arrogance left him no choice. Chancellor Zorthik, Representative Clickster, honored Council members, Daniel began, his voice still calm but carrying a new weight. Humanity came to this assembly seeking partnership. We offered our skills, our knowledge, and our goodwill. In return, you have offered us subordination. You exaggerate, Ambassador, Zorthik said with a wave of his hand. We offer you a path to eventual membership, a path that no species has completed in less than 2 centuries, Daniel replied. A path designed to keep newcomers grateful and compliant. We have watched you reject reasonable requests from a dozen younger species while the ancient races maintained their grip on power. The council chamber filled with angry chittering, hissing, and other sounds of outrage. Zorthic's scales flushed dark purple. You forget yourself, human. We could revoke even the limited access we have granted. Daniel gathered his data tablets and placed them in his case. Kevin and Michelle stood as well, collecting their materials. That will not be necessary, Chancellor. As of this moment, humanity withdraws from all agreements with the Galactic Council. We withdraw from all treaty obligations, all trade agreements, all joint projects, and all cooperative arrangements. The chamber fell silent. Clickster leaned forward. You attempt to threaten us? You think your absence will harm the Council? This is not a threat, Daniel said quietly. This is not a negotiation tactic. This is simply humanity's decision to end a relationship that has proven to be one-sided. We came in peace and friendship. You responded with condescension and exploitation. We are done. Zorthic laughed, a deep rumbling sound. You will return within a month, begging for reinstatement. Where will you go? What will you do without access to Council space, Council technology, Council markets? Daniel picked up his case and walked toward the exit. Kevin and Michelle followed. At the doorway, Daniel turned back to face the Council one last time. We will do what humanity has always done, Chancellor. We will take care of ourselves. We will build our own future. And we will remember that when we offered friendship, you offered chains. The three humans walked out of the Grand Assembly Hall. Behind them, the Council members began talking among themselves. Most seemed amused by what they viewed as human theatrics. A few looked thoughtful, but they remained silent. Zorthic addressed the chamber. The session is adjourned. Humanity will cool down and return with more realistic expectations. Until then, we have actual business to conduct. As the Council dispersed, none of them noticed the small delegation from the Minuran Collective watching the humans leave. Representative Kale turned to his aide and said quietly, I think the Chancellor just made a terrible mistake. His aide, young and inexperienced, looked confused. How so? Humans are just one species. What difference can their absence make? Kale did not answer. He had studied human history during their brief time in galactic society. He had read their literature and watched their behavior. Humans did not bluff. When they said they were done, they meant it. And the galaxy was about to learn what it had lost. President Lisa Morrison stood before the United Earth Assembly in Geneva, her silver hair pulled back in a simple bun. The chamber held representatives from every nation on Earth and every human colony in space. Silence filled the room as she prepared to address them. Members of the Assembly, our delegation has returned from Unity Station. Ambassador Harper and his team conducted themselves with dignity and professionalism. However, the Galactic Council has once again refused to treat humanity as equals. After careful consideration, I am recommending that we withdraw from all galactic institutions and agreements. A murmur ran through the chamber. President Morrison raised her hand for quiet. This is not a decision made in anger. This is a strategic choice based on 5 years of careful observation. The Council does not want partners. It wants servants. Humanity will not accept that role. The vote was called. When the results appeared on the main screen, the withdrawal measure had passed with 97% approval. Humanity was officially leaving Galactic Society. Ambassador Nicole Chung received her orders 3 hours later. She was responsible for coordinating the withdrawal across 15 space stations and 40 joint facilities. The message from Earth was clear. Conduct the withdrawal professionally, provide all research data to relevant parties, and return all human personnel within 60 days. Nicole began making calls. Her first was to the Healing Light Medical Station. where Dr. Brandon Cole ran a teaching hospital that served 12 species. Brandon, I need you to begin preparing for departure. Brandon's face on the video screen showed confusion. Departure? Nicole, I have 200 patients here, including 15 in critical condition. I have 40 medical students from 6 different species in the middle of their training. I know, Nicole said gently. You have 45 days to transfer your patients to other facilities and provide your students with all your teaching materials. Earth is recalling all medical personnel from Council space. This is insane, Brandon said, running his hand through his gray hair. Do you know how many lives we save here every month? I do, Nicole replied. And I know it is not fair to your patients or your students. But the Council made its choice. Now we must make ours. Similar conversations happened across galactic space. Human engineers at the Nexus Station shipyards received recall notices. Human teachers at the Interspecies Academy were told to wrap up their courses. Human peacekeepers in disputed zones were ordered home. Captain Amy Richardson commanded the freighter Odyssey, which ran a regular route between Earth and 12 colony worlds. Her cargo holds carried grain, vegetables, and protein supplements specially developed for alien biology. 3 of the worlds she supplied could not grow their own food due to soil conditions or atmospheric issues. Her communication system had not stopped buzzing since the withdrawal announcement. The governor of Turthos 3 had called her 4 times in 1 hour, each call more desperate than the last. Captain Richardson, please. Our stockpiles will last 3 months at most. Without your shipments, our people will starve. Amy felt terrible, but she had her orders. Governor, I am truly sorry. I will complete my current delivery schedule, but after that, I must return to Earth space. I am uploading all our agricultural data to your systems. Our crop geneticists spent 2 years developing plants that could grow in your soil. You have all that research now, but we do not have anyone trained to use it. The governor protested. We do not have your expertise. I suggest you contact Earth directly and request technical assistance, Amy said. I cannot speak for what Earth will or will not do, but we are not your enemies. We are simply no longer your suppliers. On the border world of Keth, Commander Eric Sullivan gathered his peacekeeping battalion. 500 human soldiers had maintained peace between the Caliph and Drex for 3 years. Both sides trusted human neutrality in ways they would never trust Council peacekeepers. Listen up, Eric addressed his troops. We have orders to withdraw within 2 weeks. I know what you are all thinking. I know we have friends here. I know we have made a difference. But Earth has made its decision, and we follow orders. Lieutenant Susan Hayes raised her hand. Sir, what happens when we leave? The Caliph and Drex barely tolerate each other with us here. Not our problem anymore, Eric said, though his expression showed he did not like it any more than she did. We gave 3 years of our lives to keeping these people from killing each other. We negotiated treaties, we stopped raids, we built trust. The Council thinks none of that matters. So now they can handle it themselves. Within 6 hours of the human withdrawal from Keth, border skirmishes resumed. Within 12 hours, both sides had mobilized their militias. The Council dispatched its own peacekeeping force, but the Caliph commander took one look at the Vrexian-led unit and refused to negotiate. We trusted the humans because they had no stake in our conflict. You Vrexians trade with the Drex. Your neutrality is a joke. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. On Unity Station, human technicians packed up their tools and downloaded their maintenance records. The station administrator, a Chither named Velsan, watched them go with growing concern. When will your replacements arrive? He asked the senior human engineer, a woman named Patricia Gray. We are not sending replacements, Patricia said, sealing another crate. You are welcome to hire your own technicians. But the environmental systems, the gravity generators, the water recycling plants, all of these use human modifications, Velsom protested. We do not have the training to maintain them. Patricia handed him a data chip. This contains every schematic, every maintenance protocol, every diagnostic tool we developed. It is all yours, free of charge. Good luck. On Earth, the withdrawal was having an unexpected effect. Resources that had been devoted to supporting galactic projects were now available for human development. Scientists who had been working on Council research initiatives refocused on problems affecting human colonies. Engineers who had been improving alien technology began designing better human ships. President Morrison addressed the planet again 2 weeks into the withdrawal. There are those who say we are being isolationist. That is not true. We are being selective. We will work with those who respect us as equals. We will help those in genuine need. But we will not waste our energy trying to earn respect from those determined to withhold it. In the Galactic Council chambers, High Chancellor Zorthik convened an emergency session. Minor species representatives demanded answers. Why had humanity been pushed away? What was the plan to replace human contributions? Zorthik remained confident. Humanity provided services, nothing more. Those services can be replaced. In fact, their absence gives opportunities to other species. Within 3 months, you will see that the galaxy functions perfectly well without humans. Representative Kale of the Myuran Collective stood to speak. Chancellor, I have reviewed the data. Human medical teams treat 4 billion patients annually. Human ships carry 30% of all agricultural products in Council space. Human peacekeepers maintain stability in 4 disputed zones. Human engineers design the systems that keep this very station running. How exactly do you propose to replace all of that in 3 months? You worry too much, Zorthik said dismissively. Humanity's contributions, while helpful, are not irreplaceable. The Council has survived for 10,000 years. We will adapt. But in the quiet of his private chambers that night, Zorthik reviewed the same data Kale had mentioned. The numbers were more concerning than he wanted to admit. Still, he could not back down now. The Council's authority depended on maintaining the hierarchy. If humanity could demand equality and receive it, every younger species would make the same demand. Better to let humanity go than to risk the entire system collapsing. Or so, he told himself as he reviewed reports of the first supply shortages beginning to appear in the outer colonies. 3 weeks after the last human doctor left the Turthos mining colonies, miners began falling ill. It started with fever and weakness, then progressed to respiratory failure. Within 5 days, 300 people were dead and thousands more were sick. The colonial medical director of Rexian named Serval worked frantically to identify the pathogen. When he finally isolated it, his blood ran cold. It was Turthos lung fever, a disease that had swept through the colonies 2 years ago. Back then, it had killed 12,000 miners before Dr. Michelle Park and her human team had arrived. Identified the pathogen, developed a treatment protocol, and stopped the outbreak in 3 weeks. Serval pulled up the treatment protocols Michelle had left behind. The documents were thorough and detailed, but they assumed a level of medical technology and training that his staff did not possess. The humans had used a combination of genetic therapy and targeted antibiotics that required equipment Serval had never operated. He sent an emergency transmission to the Galactic Council Medical Authority. We need help immediately. We have a Turthos lung fever outbreak. We need specialists who understand human treatment protocols. The response came 6 hours later. All available medical teams are deployed to other emergencies. We are sending standard medical supplies and advisors. Estimated arrival time, 11 days. Serval stared at the message in disbelief. 11 days. Thousands more would die in 11 days. He opened a private channel to Earth, bypassing the Council entirely. "This is Medical Director Sarvel of Turthos 3. I am requesting humanitarian assistance. We have a deadly outbreak, and we do not have the expertise to stop it." The response from Earth came within an hour. Dr. Michelle Park herself appeared on his screen. "Dr. Serval, I remember you. You were my best student during my time there. I will send you detailed instructions for adapting the treatment protocol to your available equipment. Check your database. I am uploading modified procedures now for the next 72 hours. Michelle guided Serval and his team through treating the outbreak remotely. She answered questions at all hours, provided encouragement when they struggled, and celebrated when they succeeded. By the end of the week, the outbreak was contained. The death toll stood at 4,000, far better than the 12,000 from the previous outbreak, but still devastating. Serval sent a final message to Michelle. "Thank you. You saved us again, even though we did not deserve your help." Michelle's response was simple. "We did not help because you deserved it. We helped because it was the right thing to do. That is the difference between us and the Council. While Turthos 3 fought its plague, 12 worlds faced a different crisis. The agricultural shipments from Earth had stopped completely. Captain Amy Richardson and other human freighter captains had completed their final deliveries and returned home. The Council had assured these worlds that alternative suppliers would be arranged. Those alternative suppliers were struggling. Human agricultural exports had been specially designed for each world's unique conditions. The colony on Keth Prime needed a grain that could grow in high radiation. The settlement on Broken Moon required vegetables that could survive extreme temperature swings. Human geneticists had spent years developing these crops. Council agricultural specialists tried to replicate the human work. They had all the research data, all the genetic sequences, all the environmental specifications. But they lacked the intuitive understanding humans brought to the problem. When the first Council shipments arrived, the crops failed within weeks. On Broken Moon, Governor Lee Chun watched his emergency food reserves dwindle. He was human himself, one of the few who had chosen to remain in Council space when Earth withdrew. "How long do we have?" he asked his agriculture minister. 2 months at current rationing levels," came the reply. "After that, we start seeing malnutrition. 3 months, we see starvation." Lee made a decision. He contacted Earth directly, requesting emergency food aid and agricultural assistance. President Morrison's response was compassionate but firm. "We will provide emergency supplies to prevent starvation." However, Broken Moon chose to remain under Council jurisdiction. "We cannot provide long-term support to worlds outside Earth's sphere. We recommend you petition the Council for better support or consider changing your allegiance." The emergency supplies arrived within a week. Enough to prevent immediate starvation, but not enough to solve the problem. Lee began having quiet conversations with his Council about independence. Across the galaxy, jump drives were failing at unprecedented rates. The standard jump drive had a failure rate of about 1 in 10,000 jumps. 3 weeks after human engineers left their posts, that rate had increased to 1 in 1,000. The problem was subtle. Human engineer Gary Foster had developed a maintenance protocol that caught microfractures in the drive containment fields before they became critical. The protocol required weekly scans using a specific diagnostic sequence. Council engineers had the scans and the sequence, but they did not understand why Gary had designed it that way. When Chief Engineer Corman of the Council Engineering Authority reviewed Gary's work, he saw what he thought were redundancies and inefficiencies. He issued an updated protocol that streamlined the process, removing what he considered unnecessary steps. 2 days later, the merchant vessel Prosperity suffered a catastrophic drive failure mid-jump. The ship and its crew of 43 vanished, torn apart by the uncontrolled energies of jump space. When Corman investigated, He discovered that his streamlined protocol had removed a critical safety check. He quietly reinstated Gary's original protocol, but the damage was done. Shipping companies began keeping their ships docked for extensive inspections. Interstellar commerce slowed to a crawl. Goods that normally moved freely across the galaxy sat in warehouses. Prices spiked. Shortages appeared in the Galactic Council chambers. Minor species representatives were demanding answers. Representative Kale stood at his podium, his voice carrying frustration and anger. How many more disasters must we endure before this council admits its mistake? We have plague, famine, equipment failures, and economic collapse, all within 3 weeks of humanity's departure. The solution is obvious. Bring them back on their terms. High Chancellor Zorthic's scales had lost their vibrant purple color. He looked tired and defensive. Representative Kale, you overstate the severity of these situations. Every problem you mention has a solution that does not require capitulating to human demands. Capitulating? Kale's voice rose. They asked for equality, not dominance. They asked for respect, not submission. And when we refused, they left peacefully. Now you call offering them what they originally requested capitulation? Clickster, the Chitha representative, clicked his mandibles aggressively. The human ambassador walked out of these chambers like a petulant child. We cannot reward such behavior. It would encourage every minor species to make unreasonable demands. Unreasonable? Kale looked around the chamber. Equal representation is unreasonable? Fair trade is unreasonable? The same rights given to every council member is unreasonable? Or is the real issue that humanity proved they did not need us as much as we needed them? The chamber erupted in argument. The ancient races stood firm, refusing to admit error. The younger species increasingly sided with Kale. The council that had stood united for millennia was beginning to fracture. On Earth, Ambassador Daniel Harper watched a recording of Kale's speech. He felt sympathy for the Minoran representative. Kale was fighting a losing battle. The ancient races would never admit they were wrong until the consequences became impossible to ignore. Daniel turned to his aide. Kevin Walsh. How many worlds have requested direct bilateral agreements with Earth? Kevin checked his tablet. 47 at last count. Mostly minor species and independent colonies. A few are council members seeking arrangements outside official channels. And our response? Case-by-case evaluation. We are approving most requests. President Morrison wants to show that we left the council, not galactic society. We are happy to work with anyone who treats us with respect. Daniel nodded. The council wanted to keep us subordinate. Instead, they have created the foundation for a rival alliance. They just do not realize it yet. Across the galaxy, ordinary citizens were beginning to ask questions. Why had the council let humanity go so easily? Why were council solutions to human absence so inadequate? Why did the ancient races seem more concerned with pride than practical solutions? The answers varied, but a common theme emerged. The Galactic Council had become comfortable in its power. It had forgotten how to adapt, how to compromise, how to value contributions over age. Humanity's departure had exposed those failures in ways that could not be hidden or explained away. And trembling that began when humanity walked out of the Grand Assembly Hall was growing into a quake that would reshape the entire galaxy. The border between Calath and Drex territory had been quiet for 3 years under human peacekeeping. 6 weeks after Commander Eric Sullivan withdrew his battalion, that border erupted in full-scale war. It started with a trade dispute over mining rights in an asteroid field. Under human mediation, such disputes had been resolved through negotiation and compromise. Without humans present, both sides reverted to the only language they trusted: force. The Calath sent 3 destroyers to secure the asteroid field. The Drex responded with 5 cruisers. Within hours, the first shots were fired. Within days, the conflict had spread to 3 neighboring systems. Refugee ships began fleeing the combat zones. Many heading toward human space thought the Galactic Council dispatched a peacekeeping force led by Vrexian Admiral Torvex. His fleet arrived in the disputed zone with orders to separate the combatants and enforce a ceasefire. Both sides refused to acknowledge his authority. The Caliph commander transmitted a blunt message. "We do not recognize Council jurisdiction in this matter. The humans negotiated our treaty. The humans enforced our peace. You are not the humans. Leave immediately." Admiral Torvex was not accustomed to being dismissed by minor species. "This is Admiral Torvex of the Galactic Council fleet. You will stand down or face consequences." The Caliph commander cut the transmission and continued his offensive. Admiral Torvex found himself in an impossible situation. If he attacked the Caliph, the Drex would see it as council bias and escalate further. If he attacked the Drex, the Caliph would do the same. If he did nothing, the council looked weak and ineffective. He chose to establish a defensive perimeter and wait for new orders from the council. Those orders never came because the council was paralyzed by internal disagreement, while the border war raged. A new plague emerged on the industrial world of Nexus 7. This one was worse than Terthos lung fever. It attacked multiple organ systems simultaneously and spread through both air and contact. Within 2 weeks, 80,000 people were dead, and the death toll was rising exponentially. The Council Medical Authority sent their best teams. They had studied the human protocols from Terthos. They thought they understood human medical techniques. They were wrong. Dr. Brandon Cole watched the Nexus 7 outbreak reports from Earth with growing horror. He recognized the pathogen. It was a mutated form of Reaper syndrome, a disease he had personally encountered 4 years ago. He had developed the only effective treatment through a combination of aggressive gene therapy and experimental antivirals. The procedure was dangerous, with a 20% mortality rate even when performed correctly. But it was the only option. The Council medical teams were attempting the treatment based on his published research. They were doing everything right according to the documentation. People were still dying at rates far exceeding 20% because the documentation could not capture the intuition and experience Brandon had developed through treating hundreds of cases. He contacted President Morrison directly. "Madam President, I need permission to go to Nexus 7. Thousands are dying because the council doctors do not understand the nuances of the treatment. I can save most of them if I am there in person." Morrison looked at him with sympathy and regret. "Brandon, I cannot approve that. The moment we send you, the council will expect us to solve all their problems. They will never learn to value what they had until they experience the full cost of losing it." "People are dying," Brandon said quietly. "People have always been dying," Morrison replied. "We helped them for 5 years while the council treated us like servants. Now the council must decide if pride is worth more than lives. That is not our choice to make anymore." Brandon understood the logic. He hated it, but he understood it. Instead, he spent 18 hours straight creating detailed video tutorials on treating Reaper syndrome. He sent them to Nexus 7 with a personal message. "I cannot come to you, but I can teach you what I know. Watch carefully. Ask questions. You can do this." The death toll on Nexus 7 eventually stabilized at 200,000 before the outbreak was contained. It was a catastrophe that would have been limited to perhaps 20,000 if Brandon had been there in person. The survivors knew it. The council knew it. The galaxy knew it. Economic collapse was accelerating. Human efficiency had connected markets and optimized trade routes in ways the galaxy had not appreciated until it was gone. Shipping costs had tripled as less efficient routes were used. Delivery times doubled. Small businesses that depended on just-in-time inventory collapsed. Unemployment spread across dozens of worlds. On the trading hub of Port Celestial, merchant captain Victor Hayes watched his business die. He had run a profitable shipping company for 15 years, moving specialized goods between manufacturing worlds and consumer markets. His entire business model had depended on the trade routes and customs agreements humans had established. With those systems gone, his shipping costs had increased so much that he could no longer compete. "I am filing for bankruptcy," he told his crew. "I am sorry. I cannot pay you any more." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. The economic network humanity had helped build was collapsing without them to maintain it. The Council's economic advisors scrambled to develop solutions, but they were trying to fix a system they had never fully understood. In the Galactic Council chambers, the atmosphere had changed dramatically. The confident arrogance of 6 weeks ago had been replaced by barely controlled panic. High Chancellor Zorthik stood before an angry assembly. Representative Kale led the questioning. "Chancellor, we have war, plague, famine, and economic disaster. Every problem traces directly to humanity's absence. I move that this council officially invite humanity to return with full membership and all terms they originally requested." Before Zorthik could respond, Clickster rose to object. "We cannot simply surrender to human demands. It sets a terrible precedent. Every species will expect similar treatment." "Good," Kale shot back. "Perhaps every species should receive similar treatment. Perhaps that is the entire problem with this council. We have maintained a hierarchy based on age rather than merit. Humanity exposed that flaw, and now we are paying the price." The chamber erupted in argument. Ancient races defended the traditional order. Younger species demanded change. The unity that had held the council together for millennia was fracturing before everyone's eyes. Zorthik called for order, but his voice lacked its former authority. "We will not make hasty decisions based on temporary difficulties. Yes, humanity's absence has created challenges, but we are adapting. In time, the galaxy will function smoothly again." "How much time?" demanded a representative from the agricultural world of Greenhaven, where food shortages were causing riots. "How many more must die while you protect your pride?" Before Zorthik could answer, an emergency alert sounded. A new threat had emerged, one that would make all the previous disasters seem minor by comparison. The Zenthorn Dominion, an aggressive empire that had been quiet for a decade, had launched a massive expansion. Their fleets were seizing systems in the outer territories, encountering little resistance from local defenses. The Council's military forces were stretched thin, dealing with multiple crises. They had no reserve strength to oppose the Dominion. 10 years ago, human military advisors had helped reorganize the Council's defense networks. Human tactical doctrine had made those networks flexible and responsive. Human peacekeepers had maintained stability that allowed the Council to reduce its standing military. All of that was gone now. Admiral Torvex, still stuck in the Calistrex conflict, received orders to abandon the border war and face the Dominion threat. He protested that leaving would result in massive casualties in the border region. He was told the Dominion was the priority. When he withdrew his forces, the Calith and Drex escalated their war immediately. 3 colonies were bombed. Civilian casualties mounted into the hundreds of thousands. The Council had chosen to address one crisis by allowing another to worsen. On Earth, President Morrison received reports of the Dominion expansion with concern. "They are testing the Council's weakness," she said to her military advisors. "They see the chaos, and they are taking advantage." General Paul Grant nodded. "Do we intervene?" "No," Morrison said firmly. "This is exactly what the Council needs to see. They thought they could function without us. Let them prove it or admit they cannot. Either way, We do not rescue them from consequences they brought on themselves. But Morrison did issue orders to strengthen defenses in human space and to accept refugees fleeing the conflicts. Hundreds of ships arrived at Earth's borders every day, carrying families escaping war, plague, and famine. Earth provided humanitarian assistance, medical care, and temporary shelter. Many of these refugees had never interacted with humans before. They were shocked by the kindness and efficiency they encountered. "Why do you help us?" one Drek's mother asked as human doctors treated her injured child. "We are not your responsibility." The human doctor, a young woman named Sarah Kim, smiled gently. "Because it is the right thing to do. We did not leave the council because we hate aliens. We left because we refuse to be treated as inferiors. But we still care about people in need." That message spread. Refugees told others about human compassion. Rescue ships told stories of human. 6 months after humanity walked out of the Grand Assembly Hall, High Chancellor Zorthik stood before what remained of the Galactic Council's authority. The chamber was less than half full. 15 species had formally withdrawn from the Council. 20 more had suspended their participation. The ancient alliance that had governed galactic civilization for 10,000 years was collapsing. Zorthik's scales had faded to a dull gray. He looked decades older than he had half a year ago. "Honored members, I must report that our situation continues to deteriorate. The war between the Caliph and Drex has spread to 7 systems. The Zenthoran Dominion has captured 12 of our outer territories. Plague has broken out on 4 more worlds. Economic output is down 43% across council space." He paused, and the silence in the chamber was heavy with despair. "I therefore propose that we send a formal delegation to Earth with an official apology and an offer of full council membership on humanity's original terms." Quickster, the Chither representative who had mocked humanity 6 months ago, sat quietly in his seat. He no longer objected. He no longer had the energy or the credibility to object. His own homeworld was suffering from food shortages because human agricultural shipments had stopped. Representative Kale spoke, his voice tired but firm. "Chancellor, I support this measure, but I do not believe it will work. We humiliated humanity. We dismissed their contributions. We treated them as children seeking our approval. Now, when we are desperate, we offer them what we should have given freely. Why would they accept?" "Because they are better than us," said a new voice. Governor Li Chun of Broken Moon had joined the council session via remote link. As a human who had chosen to remain in council space, his perspective carried weight. Humans do not hold grudges the way we do. They do not seek revenge. If you approach them with genuine humility and respect, they will listen. Zorthik nodded slowly. "Then I will lead the delegation myself. It is my responsibility to repair what I helped to break." 3 days later, a small Vrexian diplomatic ship arrived at Earth's orbital station. Zorthik had brought only 2 aides with him. No grand entourage, no ceremony, just a quiet request for a meeting with human leadership. Ambassador Daniel Harper met them in a simple conference room. The contrast with the Grand Assembly Hall could not have been more stark. Daniel wore casual business attire. The room had no elaborate decorations, no symbols of power. Just a table, some chairs, and a window showing Earth rotating slowly below. "Chancellor Zorthik," Daniel said, gesturing to the seats. "Please, sit down." Zorthik sat, and for the first time in his diplomatic career, he struggled to find words. Finally, he began. "Ambassador Harper, I have come to apologize. The Galactic Council made a terrible mistake. We allowed pride and tradition to blind us to the value of your contributions. We treated you with disrespect and arrogance. I personally insulted you and your people. For all of this, I am deeply sorry." Daniel listened quietly, his expression neutral. I appreciate your apology, Chancellor. What else did you come to say? I come to offer humanity full council membership with all the terms you originally requested. Equal representation, unrestricted trade rights, full colony privileges, and a seat among the decision-makers. We also offer a formal alliance treaty and preferential trade status. Daniel poured himself a glass of water and took a sip before responding. Chancellor, your offer is generous. 6 months ago, we would have accepted it gladly. But things have changed. Zorthik felt his hope beginning to collapse. Changed how? We are no longer interested in joining the Galactic Council, Daniel said simply. Not because we are angry or seeking revenge, but because we have found a better path forward. Over the next hour, Daniel explained what humanity had built in the 6 months since leaving the Council. Earth had established bilateral agreements with 47 species and independent colonies. These agreements were based on mutual respect and shared benefit, with no hierarchy of ancient races and newcomers. Trade flourished between these partners. Medical cooperation saved lives. Military alliances protected against aggression. Scientific collaboration advanced knowledge. All without the bureaucracy and politics of the council system. We call it the Coalition of Free Worlds, Daniel continued. It is not a government. It is a voluntary association. No species rules over others. Every member has an equal voice. Decisions are made by consensus, not by the ancient races imposing their will on younger ones. Zorthik listened with growing realization. Humanity had not just left the council. They had created an alternative that was proving more effective and more appealing. And if the council wished to join this coalition? Daniel smiled slightly. The coalition is open to any species that accepts its principles of equality and mutual respect. However, joining would require the Galactic Council to fundamentally change its structure and philosophy. Are you prepared to give up the hierarchy? To treat the youngest species as equal partners with the ancient races? Zorthik knew the answer before Daniel finished the question. The ancient races would never accept such terms. Their entire identity was built on being the wise elders guiding younger civilizations. No, we are not prepared for that. Then we cannot help you, Daniel said gently. However, Earth is willing to establish a bilateral relationship with the Galactic Council as one entity among many. We will trade with you, share research, provide humanitarian aid in emergencies. But we will not rejoin your institution or submit to its authority. After Zorthik's delegation departed, Daniel met with President Morrison. How did it go? She asked. As expected. He offered everything we originally asked for. I declined, Morrison nodded. How do you think the council will respond? They will struggle on for a while, trying to maintain their authority. But the coalition is growing stronger every day. Eventually, the ancient races will have to choose between adapting or becoming irrelevant. The prediction proved accurate. Over the following months, more species left the Galactic Council and joined the Coalition of Free Worlds. The Minuran Collective was among the first, with Representative Kale becoming one of the Coalition's strongest advocates. Former Council colonies declared independence and requested Coalition membership. Even some client worlds of the ancient races began making quiet inquiries. The Zenthoran. Dominion's expansion posed the Coalition's first major test. When Dominion forces attacked a Coalition member world, humanity proposed a unified military response. Every Coalition member contributed forces according to their ability. The combined fleet was smaller than what the Dominion expected, but far more effective than Council forces had been. Admiral Paul Grant commanded the Coalition fleet using human tactical doctrine adapted for multi-species cooperation. The Dominion had prepared for the kind of rigid, predictable responses they had seen from Council militaries. They were not prepared for the flexibility and innovation the Coalition brought to battle. The decisive engagement occurred at the Crimson Nebula, where Grant used the environmental conditions in ways Dominion commanders had thought impossible. Human ships provided electronic warfare and coordination. Caliph vessels, no longer fighting their Drex neighbors, delivered devastating close-range firepower. Manoran fighters exploited gaps in Dominion formations. Species that had been enemies under Council rule worked together seamlessly. The Dominion retreated after losing a third of their fleet. They had expected an easy victory against a fractured galaxy. Instead, they found a united force that fought with intelligence and determination. The Dominion sued for peace within weeks, accepting terms that required them to return all captured territories and pay reparations. The victory strengthened the Coalition's reputation and attracted even more members. Within a year of humanity's withdrawal from the Council, the Coalition included over 70 species and controlled nearly 40% of known space. The Galactic Council survived, but its influence continued to fade. The ancient races maintained their traditional structure among themselves, but they no longer dictated terms to the galaxy. They became a regional power rather than a galactic authority. 5 years after walking out of the Grand Assembly Hall, Ambassador Daniel Harper stood in the Coalition Assembly on Terra Nova Station. The station had been built cooperatively by 12 species, incorporating the best designs and technologies from each. It orbited a beautiful blue world that had been jointly colonized by humans and Minorans as a symbol of their partnership. The assembly chamber was nothing like the Grand Hall. Instead of towering podiums arranged by species hierarchy, there were comfortable seats arranged in a circle. Every representative sat at the same level, with the same voice, sharing the same authority. Daniel called the session to order. We have one item of business today. The Galactic Council has requested observer status in the Coalition Assembly. How do we respond? There was discussion. Some members wanted to reject the request outright, seeing it as the Council trying to infiltrate and eventually dominate the Coalition. Others argued that opening dialogue showed strength rather than weakness. Representative Kale eventually stood to speak. I was a council member when humanity walked away. I watched the ancient races destroy something beautiful through their arrogance. But I also believe in the principles we have built here.